Welcome back 3D design students. In this video I'm going to show you how to make some rocks using procedural modeling techniques, and we're going to use these rocks in our outdoor meadow scene. Procedural modeling techniques use a texture or a computer-generated map to modify the geometry and displace it and thereby give it a random appearance. It would be really difficult to sculpt a rock by hand and make it look natural. So we use procedural techniques to get a natural look. So let's get started. I'm going to create a new scene here. And the first thing we're going to start with is a cube. So go to your poly modeling shelf and create a cube, and then go ahead and scale it up some. And then we're going to do something unusual to it. We're going to smooth it. So go to Mesh, Smooth, and that will make the cube into sort of a sphere shape and give it 3 divisions so we have some geometry to work with. I know you might be thinking we should use a sphere here, but if we use a sphere, the way the geometry meets at the top, there's a bunch of triangles up here, it pinches and it doesn't look right. So we're going to use a cube that's been smoothed. So from here we can shape this cube using the scale tool, give it kind of an egg shape. We can flatten it out. We could use any way you really want to pre-shape it. You could also use a lattice. If you go to Deform Lattice and bring up the options, I usually use a 3x3x3, and that creates a lattice around the geometry. And if you right click and select lattice point, then you can grab these points and kind of shape the rock a little, give it a little more randomness. And just grab one point and move it up or tuck it in, however you want to do it, just to give it a pre-shape. And then I would go ahead and collapse that. So let's select the cube and go to Edit, Delete All by Type History to permanently apply that deformation. And one other way we can deform this is go back to Deform, and we can actually use a texture to deform it. If you apply that, and then you come over here to the texture slot and open that up, you can select a number of things. Not all of them work, but noise is a good one to start. And when you do that, you can see you get some other types of deformation. So again, this is all sort of in the name of pre-shaping it. You can just play around with these. And this is procedural modeling, what we're doing right here. We're using this noise map to manage the deformation of this rock. And you can just play around with these settings and get the look you want. You can also come to the Place node and play around with the tiling. Right now it's at 1. I can change it to 0.5 to make it smaller, actually bigger. I can change it to 3 or some other larger number to repeat it more across the surface of the rock. So as I said, you can apply any and all of these techniques if you want. Scale it, use a lattice deformation, or you can just apply a texture deformation to it and pick noise or some other thing to deform the mesh. So before we go any further with this, let's go ahead and create a project folder. Go to Project Window, New, name this one Rocks, and make sure you know where it's going. Go ahead and click Accept. And the next thing we need for this is some actual rock textures. I usually use textures.com. Sign up for a free account. You can get 15 credits per day to download textures. I have 8 left. Downloaded several today. And then once you sign in, just search rock and you will get all sorts of different things to use here. You can't use all of them. Like for example, you can't use this lava one because it is what's called a substance texture and it costs money. This one we could use. This mossy rock one is another substance texture which costs money. So some of these you can use and some can't. Some you can't. I'm going to grab this cave rock wall. This is one I haven't used before. And I'm going to open it up. And once you do, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the textures that make this material up. I need the albedo, and I'm going to download it and find my project folder and put it in the source images folder. And then I need the height map, which is this one. And it'll just go straight to that folder since that's the last one I used. And I need the normal map. And those are the three that we need for this. Once you're done with that, we can start to finish the rock. So let's select the rock, right-click on it, and assign a new material. And we're going to assign an Arnold standard surface shader. And then let's start to apply the textures we downloaded. For the color node, we're going to grab that albedo map we downloaded. And because we set up a project folder, it went straight to those textures. And then I'm going to turn on shaded in viewport so you can see it a little bit. Remember, this is an Arnold material, so it's not going to be perfect. And then we're going to go back a node, and we're going to go down here to the geometry rollout, and we're going to apply the normal map to the bump mapping node. We need to go to the bump value node, and that's where the normal map goes. And then we need to make this, change this from sRGB to raw. Go back a node, and then change this use as to tangent space normal. And then go back a node, and let's change that albedo map to raw as well. Now this looks pretty good, but you can see where the texture is a little distorted in the spots. So I think what we need to do at this point is apply UV coordinates to it. So I'm going to select my rock and go to UV, planar, and that applies the texture a little better. As you can see, I'm just going to leave it like that. It's a little weird on the sides, but that's all right. And as you can see, it does look considerably better. If we wanted this rock to look better, then what we would have to do is unwrap it. We would pick a spot to have a seam, and we would unfold it and do all of that like we did for the rabbit project. But this is just quick and dirty, so we're just going to leave it like that. And now for the fun part. Let's switch back to object mode, and let's find the shader that we made. Let's go ahead and name this rock. And then we're going to click forward so we can go to the SG node, just like we did for the rabbit, and we are going to apply a displacement map. And the displacement map we're going to apply is the height map that we downloaded, this one. Now you don't see anything yet because this is an Arnold texture, and we need to use Arnold to be able to see the effects. So let's go ahead to Arnold and add a sky dome light, and then turn on Arnold rendering. And you will see the displacement that just happened. Now to manage this displacement, we can do a couple of things. We can go to the shape node for this rock here, open up the Arnold rollout, go to the subdivisions and change it to Cat Clark, and give it more subdivisions. And that just makes it really crazy. We can also manage the displacement right here below the subdivision node, like so, and just make it a little less than that craziness. And we can also manage that back at the SG node here. If we go forward like so, and here's the displacement shader node right here. We can play with the scale here, but I think this scale is almost the same as the other scale. You can just lessen it or whatever. And then finally, we can go to the place file node, or the place texture node here, and we can play around with the repeat. You can make it more or less to give us a different look. But this is entirely up to you how you want this rock to look. Once you have it looking like you want, if you click it, you will see the geometry inside the displacement. Now, if we were to export this or use it any other way, we would not end up with the displacement that we have here through Arnold. So what we need to do is bake that effect onto the mesh. To do that, we come up to the Arnold menu, Utilities, and we select Bake Selected Geometry, of course with that geometry selected. And once you do that, it'll ask you where you want to put it. I usually put it in the Assets folder of the project. Name it, and click Save. And what that does is that exports your object, your geometry, as an OBJ, a universal 3D file. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this scene. I'm going to name this one Rock 01. Then I'm going to make a new scene, and I'm going to name this one Rocks, because this is where I'm going to put all the rocks that I create into one scene. And then I'm going to import the rock that I just baked. Remember, it's in my Assets folder right here. See, it's an OBJ file. And when I bring it in, it comes in, but it's untextured. To texture it, I need to reapply a material. And of course, this is going to be an Arnold material, the AI Standard Surface Shader. And I'm going to find that albedo map for the rock. Turn on Shaded in Viewport. And then I'm going to create a skylight, or I could also create a physical sky. That's another thing you can do that we don't do very often. We should do it more. And open up the Arnold render view. And I can see we have a problem right away. It's too shiny. So I need to go to the material and make it completely rough. But to create this scene, we need a plane, we need a ground plane. We need to scale it up. I'm going to turn on the Arnold render view so that we can take a look at that. And I'm going to create a direct light. Now we can use this rock a number of different ways. We can rotate it like so and have it stick up out of the ground. We can embed it into the ground. We can have it sitting up on the ground a little more than it is, rotate it a little bit more. And then we can use it with other rocks if we copy it. We can use it with other rocks to create different, or copies of itself to create different looks as well. Like so. And of course we can scale it up. And that is how you create a procedural rock in Maya. Now what I would like for you to do is to create at least 3 different rocks using this technique. Import them and set them up in a scene just like this. And then I want you to render it out and turn it in to the rocks part of the outdoor meadow assignment. And I'll see you in the next video.